Today I have a funk guitar warm-up or technique exercise for you that is going to make you a more consistent, a more accurate and more groovy rhythm player. That is a promise. So this is a piece that I've designed to give you a short, effective rhythm guitar workout, and you spend a few minutes a day working on this for a month or so and you will notice some big improvements. And I should say that it's not just for funk players, because the kind of things we're going to be working on today you can apply to just about any style. You could play this exercise with a metronome, but what I've done to make it a bit more fun is put together a little backing track which I'm going to make available to you completely free of charge on my website. But before we go any further, I'm going to have a little bit of a play, going to show you what's involved here, and then I'm going to take you through it in detail. So that's the basic idea. I'm going to start by giving you a few general pointers about playing funk rhythm guitar. Then I'm going to take you through the specifics of this exercise. So just let me bring the camera a bit closer and we can get started. Okay, let's kick off by talking about 16th notes. Now, a lot of funk and groove based music is based on a 16th note feel. Not all funk music, but certainly a lot of it. And this particular piece is based around having a consistent 16th note rhythm in your strumming hand. So let's start by establishing that kind of feel, and I just want you to rest your fretting hand across all of the strings of the guitar so that we're muting the strings, and then with your strumming hand we're just going to go down up like so. Now 16th notes just means that each beat is divided up into 4 parts. And the most common way of counting this is just to say 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So if you find that helpful, you can actually count out this rhythm. So it's 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E. So we've got 4 strums per beat. That's the basic feel. And if you've never done this kind of thing before, I think it's worth just spending some time getting comfortable with that and getting consistent with that. Things to bear in mind, I think, with this, the most important thing for me is just to stay as loose and relaxed as you can in your strumming hands. So nice and loose in the wrist and the forearm. And just try and keep those 16th note subdivisions as smooth and as even as possible. I think generally with funk stuff you're tending to emphasize the higher strings, so you're not necessarily strumming all of the strings equally. I'm emphasizing the highest 4 strings or so when I'm doing this stuff most of the time. So that's the general idea. Let's move on to the actual exercise, which is all about isolating each of the 16th notes in the beat in turn and learning to feel them. And we've actually got 4 parts to this exercise, each of them based around a particular 16th note rhythm. So here's the rhythm that we're dealing with in section 1, and as you can see we've got a 16th note and then we've got 3 muted scratches. And what we're going to do is highlight that first 16th note of the beat by squeezing down a funky sounding chord on that subdivision. So the particular chord I'm going to be using for most of this is an E9 chord. So got the 7th fret on the A string, 6th fret on the D, and then I'm barring with my 3rd finger at the 7th fret on the top 3 strings. It's our basic chord. Not always playing or sounding the lower notes in that chord. As I say, I'm tending to emphasize the highest 3 or 4 strings in that chord shape. So grab that E9 chord, and what we're going to do is this. We're going to squeeze that chord down on beat 1, and then we're going to follow that up with 3 muted scratches, which gives us this. So we've got 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and And I think for maximum funkiness, you want to keep that squeeze quite brief. You don't want to hold that chord down for too long, so you want to keep it quite short and staccato sounding. So as soon as you've pressed down, then immediately you release pressure. That's the basic rhythm we're dealing with, and what we're going to do is we're going to apply that rhythm to a 2-bar pattern, and that sounds like this. We've got So you can see that I'm squeezing down that chord on beat 1. Then I've got a beat of scratches. I'm squeezing down on beat 3. And then 4 more scratches. And then in the second bar, I'm squeezing the chord down on each beat. So you could think 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. So that's the basic pattern. I'm playing that twice, then I'm just moving the chord 1 fret lower, so we've got an E flat 9 just to give a little bit of harmonic variation. I'm doing the same thing. And then I'm moving back up to E9. So that's one complete 8-bar cycle of this exercise. Let me just put all of that together for you. 1, 2, 3, 4. On to part 2 then, and here is the rhythm that we're dealing with. And as you can see, we're just shifting our focus onto that second 16th note in the beat. So now we've got a scratch, and we're squeezing down our chord on the second 16th note subdivision, and then we've got 2 more scratches. So that would sound like this. So in terms of the 1 E and stuff, we're emphasizing the E here. So it's 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So you can see that the chord falls on the upstroke of the pick here. And I think in the demo that I did at the start of this video, I was just changing chords slightly, so you could just stick with an E9 for all of this exercise, or you could move to some other E7 or E9 type chord. So I think I moved up to this particular chord shape. This is just an E7 chord. I've got 9th fret on the D, G, B and 10th fret on the high E. So you can use that if you want to, or you can just stick with the E9. So once you've got the hang of this basic rhythm, we're going to apply the same idea to that we did in the first section of the exercise. So we're going to go. So we've got our rhythm, and then 4 scratches. We've got the rhythm again, 4 scratches, and then we're playing our rhythm on each beat in turn. Repeat that. Then moving 1 fret lower. And then then back up again. So here's the next rhythm, and I'm sure you're getting the basic idea here. We're just shifting our focus along to the next 16th note. So now we've got 2 scratches, and then we're squeezing down the chord, and then we've got another scratch. So and that means that now we're highlighting the and of each beat. It's 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And then we're going to apply our same pattern to that. So repeat that. Down. Back up. Which brings us onto our final rhythm, which looks like this. And here we're going to be emphasizing that final 16th note subdivision in each beat. So we've got 1 E and A. So this again falls on an upward stroke of the pick. We've got scratch, 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 squeeze. And if we apply our 2-bar rhythmic pattern to this, we've got and then we repeat that. Down. And up again. So that's really the exercise, and then we're just stringing together all of those different rhythms into one big exercise. Now, if this kind of thing is new to you, then I'd certainly suggest spending time just working on one of those rhythms at a time before attempting to string all of them together. So you might do the entire exercise just doing this rhythm. Just do that for a couple of minutes, then you could shift your focus to the next variation until you're feeling comfortable with all of them and you're able to just switch between them naturally. So that's it. It's important you stay relaxed, listen to the drums, try and find the groove. I mean, people talk all kinds of stuff about what it means to groove and finding the pocket and all of that kind of thing, and a lot of that talk I don't think is particularly helpful. I think you know it when you find it and when you start feeling it. So I think by doing this exercise, I hope you learn to feel when something is really grooving and when it isn't, and you'll start to feel those nuances of groove when you're slightly rushing or dragging or swinging, and all of those things will become apparent, I think, if you work on this exercise. Let me briefly tell you about the gear I'm using today, and I'm trying to go for a typical funk guitar sound. So I'm using my Strat. The Strat seems to be the go-to funk guitar, and got the pickup selector on the neck and middle pickup. It's that kind of in-between sound which often seems to work well with funk guitar. Amp today is my Fender Deluxe Reverb. Using a couple of pedals today, I'm using my Dynacomp for a bit of compression, and I do find that compression helps with clean sounds and with funk sounds in particular. Got to be careful not to overdo it though, because it's the nature of compression that it smooths out the dynamic range of a sound, and you add too much and it will just choke up the sound completely. So I've got the sensitivity control set quite low on the Dynacomp. And then I'm using one other pedal, which is the marvellous Hudson Broadcast pedal, which I'm a big fan of, and it's quite an unusual pedal. I was going to say it's an overdrive pedal, but it's not exactly an overdrive pedal. As I understand it, it's based on the preamp sound of an old recording console from the 60s, and my thinking here is that a lot of those classic funk guitar sounds are recorded straight into the board, so I'm trying to get that kind of sound from the Broadcast pedal, and it does seem to give a bit of extra edge and sparkle and just brings the sound into your face a little bit more. So there we have it. It's over to you now to put some work in with this exercise, and I really do hope you get some good results from it. Now, as I said at the start of the video, you can play this along to a metronome, and I think the tempo that I was playing at the start of this video was around about 100 beats per minute, but you can of course go slower than that or faster than that depending on your current level of ability. And also remember, there is going to be this backing track available for free on my website, so do check that out. If you want the tab to this exercise, then you will have to pay for it. That's up on my Patreon page, but if you fancy becoming a patron, do check that out. It's a truly joyous experience being one of my patrons, and I thoroughly recommend it. But thanks very much for watching today. I shall see you next time. Bye.